This is a specialized S-Works Crux, happens to be my personal Crux, and it's claimed to be the world's lightest gravel bike at 725 grams for a size 56 frame. Now I know it may be somewhat of a surprise given that we do a lot of steel bikes and budget gravel bikes on the channel, but if we're being totally honest, I'm a fan of all bikes, and I feel like the more vast the range of bikes that I ride, from the most budget to the most premium, the more broad my perspectives will be, and the better informed the viewers of this channel will in turn be. At least that's what I told myself when I bought this frame set. Now, there's a lot of great content on the Crux on YouTube right now, but a lot of it is through the lens of really strong cyclists like GC Performance. David Arthur's got a bunch of videos on the Crux, as well as Outdoor Bros. And all these channels focus on the performance gains that the bike allegedly offers, and very few videos, if any, focus on the technical side, or dare I say, the negative aspects of owning one of these extremely premium bikes. Which is why in this video, I'll share my experiences with the bike as an average cyclist, which by the way are mostly positive opinions, but I will point out what I believe to be 4 legitimate dislikes about the bike that nobody else seems to be discussing. Alright, so for starters, let's talk about all the things that I do like about the bike, because there are a lot. This is a 2024 specialized S-Works Crux in size 52. The colorway, put it on the screen. Good morning. The colorway is just like, it's called some kind of sage white, but it's actually more of like a mint green color. Now this build features the Logos Epo K 700C wheels, some Pirelli Centrato Gravel M tires. These tires are 700C by 45 millimeters wide. It's actually a GRX 800 series 11-speed mechanical group set in the Garbaruk cage mod, which allows me to run an 11 to 50 tooth cassette in the back. Cranks are the Garbaruk gravel cranks and 165 millimeter length, and I've got the Roval Terra handlebars. These are 42 centimeters wide. And it's finished off with some Burr Emoji cycling tape and the knockoff specialized 3D printed saddle. Now this is claimed to be the lightest gravel bike in the world, but this is definitely not the lightest build in the world. On my scale this morning, the bike weighs in at 17.66 pounds, but that's with some XT SPD pedals, some bottle cages, a bell, my hammerhead mount. So if we subtract all those things, we're right about that 17-pound mark, which is still a remarkably lightweight bike. It's definitely the lightest bike that I've ever owned, and it's a solid 2 or 3 pounds lighter than even my dedicated road bike. Now, aside from being super fancy and lightweight, one of the main reasons I bought this bike was for the geometry. As far as gravel bikes go, I tend to like a chainstay at around 420 to 425 millimeters, which is right in line with this Crux here, which has 425 millimeter chainstays. And I also like a balanced front end. I don't like anything too slack. I don't like anything too upright and twitchy. So with the trail of 69 millimeters, it's kind of the perfect balance for me as far as geometry goes. Now, another thing that really attracted me to this bike, and it's the reason a lot of people are gravitating towards the Crux lately, is because it's a relatively simple bike. There's basically nothing proprietary on here. You know, I've got a specialized Diverge, and if you're a regular to the channel, you kind of know how I feel about the specialized Future Shock. It works decently well as far as gravel suspension goes, but the benefits, in my opinion, don't outweigh all the negatives associated with the Future Shock system. So the Crux uses just a standard, you know, tapered headset. It also uses a round 27.2 millimeter diameter seat post, and it uses a threaded BSA bottom bracket. So basically nothing special, nothing proprietary. It just kind of lets the bike speak for itself. So, I mean, really, what is there to say? It's a super light bike, 17 pounds. The geometry is just like perfect for the kind of riding that I do. It climbs super well. It, in my opinion, is super balanced. One of my favorite bikes as far as performance that I've ever ridden. And that's pretty much what all of the videos are going to say about the S-Works Crux. This is the only bike you'll ever need. It's the quiver killer, etc., etc. But in my opinion, it's not an absolutely perfect bike. There are a few things that really made me question some of the decisions that went into the design of this bike. Now, the first one is not so much a design consideration, it's actually just that it's not as light as Specialized claims. On all the media outlets, on the website, this is claimed to be a 725 gram frame in a size 56. Now, obviously that means no fork, just the frame, but when I measured this size 52 frame, it came in at about 825 grams, so just a touch over 100 grams more than the stated weight. Now, that's with everything that I could possibly remove from the frame, removed all the hardware, all the bolts, the seat post collar, basically anything that I could remove from the bike, I removed before I weighed it. And you know, I'm not trying to be like a weight weenie or anything here. 100 grams is really not that much weight, but with respect to the claimed weight of 725 grams, that's 14% higher than the claimed weight, which is not nothing, especially if you're going to charge $5,000 for the frame set and claim that it's the world's lightest gravel bike. Now, I know some of you are going to say, well, technically that's the weight of the unpainted, unfinished frame, and yeah, you're probably right. There's some stuff that I couldn't remove from the frame, like the paint job. There's some like factory installed helicopter tape on the underside of the down tube. The threaded BSA inserts, those are like, you know, baked into the frame. Some stuff I couldn't remove, and so it is possible that without all those things, the absolute bare carbon was in fact 725 grams. But again, still, if you spend all this money and you receive the frame, first thing you're gonna do is weigh it, and immediately it's like 14% heavier than it claimed, well, you might just be a little bit disappointed, is all. Sun's kind of like right in my eye here. Let me just get down here for a second. All right, so the second thing that bugs me about the bike is just the cable routing. Now, I'll kind of just show you here, but there's one port here on the side, sort of side of the head tube. That's meant for the rear hydraulic brake line. And then there's this sort of top plug thing on the top of the down tube, and that's meant for a rear derailleur, and if you want to run a front mechanical derailleur, both those shift cables would come through here. Now, admittedly, most people who buy the S-Works version of the Crux probably going to go high-end and go electronic shifting anyways, so this is probably going to be a non-issue for most S-Works Crux owners. But for me, I'm running mechanical for the time being, and the thing that really bugs me is that you can't run two cables through the side port here. What I'd really love to do is just to run the brake housing and the rear derailleur cable through this side port here and just have like a clean down tube. But the way that it's designed, I'm supposed to run the hydraulic line through the side of the head tube and then run a separate line through the top of the down tube here. And I tried setting it up that way. You know, it looked really funky. It wasn't super clean. And what I really wanted to do is what I've done here, which is to run the brake hose and the shift cable through the same port. At least this way they're like together as one unit. The only issue is that the holes drilled on this sort of dual port here are only drilled out for the diameter of shift housing. And as you may know, hydraulic line is slightly larger in diameter than shift housing. So the brake line wouldn't actually fit in its stock form. So what I ended up having to do was to actually drill out one of the holes on the metal plug here so that I could run the hydraulic line right up next to the shift line. So again, it's relatively clean looking. You know, I would much rather see a clean down tube and just run both of these cables either through the side of the head tube here or even through the side of the down tube there. So kind of nitpicky, yes, with the cable routing. There's two other gripes that I have with the bike that are definitely more substantial than just the cable routing issue. And one of them is this. So basically, no matter how well I try to set up the headset, you hear that clicking? That's play in the headset, but it actually requires a fair bit of force to get it to kind of click like that. And so it's not an issue of preload. I've got the preload set just right on this headset. I can slightly overload the headset bearings, which you definitely should not do. And it almost gets rid of that clicking in the headset, but doesn't entirely. And so it's been kind of a headache to deal with the headset. Now, I know earlier I said one of the best things about this bike is it doesn't have the Future Shock. There's nothing proprietary about it. But even with the standard sort of threadless headset setup here, there's still something going on with, I don't know, maybe it's the alignment or some tolerance issues in the carbon. I'm just not able to completely eliminate that tiny bit of play, essentially no matter how tight I preload the headset bearings. And I kind of know that Specialized probably knows about this because the frame set actually came with a couple of micro shims that I took to mean I was supposed to use them between the upper headset bearing and the dust cap to kind of take out some of that slack. So I used those shims and it helped a little bit, but again, it didn't completely resolve the issue. And then the last thing that I'll mention is the seat post design. It's actually pretty horrible. This is the Alpinist seat post, which is supposed to be one of the lightest seat posts in existence, and it definitely is. It's a super light seat post, but in order to design this seat post, some major sacrifices had to be made in terms of the usability and the serviceability. So what I mean is, if you take a look, and it's probably hard to see from here, but there's two bolts that secure the seat. The one in the rear faces up, and you can access the bolt head from the back underside of the seat post there. And then the front seat post bolt goes downward into the shaft of the seat post, essentially. And basically, it's just really hard to access that front bolt. So fortunately, I've got this like knockoff, 3D printed specialized saddle here, which allows you to get an Allen wrench through the webbing of this sort of middle section, but a lot of saddles don't have a cutout there. So if you don't have a saddle with like a cutout in the top, really the only way to access that front bolt there is to stick like a tiny, 1.5 millimeter Allen wrench through and basically turn it like a quarter turn at a time until you get it nice and tight. Now what's hilarious is that there's a bolt torque here that says 3.1 Newton meters, which I just find it hilarious that they go to the 10th digit, because there's no way you're going to get a torque wrench on that if you're just tightening it with like a, like an Allen wrench. So definitely kind of a ridiculous design here. I really don't see why they couldn't just put two bolts on the side like a normal seat post, but specialized. So that's definitely the most proprietary thing on the bike, is the seat post, which I suppose is something that I shouldn't complain about, but it is definitely a gripe that not a lot of videos are talking about. All right, so having said all that, it's still a kick-ass bike. I mean, there's no doubting that this is an extremely premium bike. It's definitely super fun to ride, and for pretty much any really long, organized event or super long challenging ride, this is probably going to be the bike of choice for me. Again, the geometry is just spot on for me. The lightweight carbon is really nice as far as the weight goes, but there is also a little bit of compliance built in. It's definitely more comfortable to ride than the Diverge that I have. For reference, the Diverge that I have is a 2021 Diverge Sport Carbon, so it's definitely not the S-Works, Carbon Diverge, and you can actually tell a difference in the ride quality for sure. And then earlier in the video, I basically glossed over the fact that I'm running the Roval Terra handlebars. This is a pretty premium handlebar. It's a $250 carbon bar, definitely of the most expensive carbon bars that I've ever tried. And while I do like these handlebars a lot in terms of fit and feel, I'm not super convinced that there's any tangible benefit as far as compliance over like a standard alloy bar. Now, one video that I'm actually working on now is I've done some accelerometer testing where I've analyzed the data in the frequency domain, and preliminary results are showing that there's basically no difference in vibration reduction going from a Ritchie Butano alloy bar to these Roval Terra carbon bars. So that video will definitely be dropping relatively soon if that's something you're interested in. If you have any questions about my experience with the S-Works Crux so far, just drop them down in the comments. I'll be happy to answer as many as I can. Thanks again for watching. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. If you haven't already, we'll see you next time.